The next class of submarines started by the Japanese was the 3,512 surfaced and 4,290 submerged ton I-351 class, also known as the Sen-Ho type, which were built between May 1943 and January 1945. Being in the 300 series, it shouldn't come as any surprise that these were supply submarines. In this case, tankers. They were the last of the Japanese giants. The idea was for them to carry avgas and weapons to resupply long-range seaplanes that were doing reconnaissance behind enemy lines. Like I said, the Japanese loved them some seaplanes, and that made sense. The Pacific is mostly water, and finding your enemy is kind of important, especially if they're coming for you. And make no mistake, both American and Japanese doctrine assumed that once Japan conquered the Philippines, the U.S. would be coming. Following the Battle of Midway and then the landing on Guadalcanal, it was clear to everyone who was moving forward and who was on the retreat. As the war ground on, and by the time she was finally commissioned, it was 1945. There was no need to look for the enemy. So she was retasked with running fuel from the East Indies to Japan. As you may have noticed, as we get nearer and nearer the end here, the desperation is setting in. The second boat was never completed, and she was left as a big, easy to find, easy to track, and slow to escape target, filled with avgas. I-351 was started May 1st, 1943, and completed January 28, 1945. I-352 was started November 3rd, 1943, but was never completed. Main armament was 4-bow 533mm tubes for 4 torpedoes, aka no reloads. 4 single 76mm mortars were mounted forward of the sail. Propulsion on the surface was provided by 2 diesel engines, which produced 3,700 horsepower that ran the 2 propellers and recharged the batteries for a surface speed of 15 knots. While submerged, she used her batteries to power 2 motors, which produced 1,200 horsepower for a top speed of 6 knots. Range on the surface was 13,000 nautical miles at 14 knots, and submerged she could do 100 nautical miles at 3 knots. Test diving depth was 90 meters. 365,000 gallons of fuel, 15 tons of ordnance, and 11 tons of water could be carried. I-351 was completed with types 13 and 22 radar. I-351 completed post-commissioning training in late April 1945 and sailed to and from Singapore, bringing back 132,000 gallons of aviation fuel for kamikaze planes at the start of June. In late June, she left for Singapore on another supply run where she loaded another 132,000 gallons and headed back home. Northeast of Borneo, in the pre-dawn hours of July 15, 1945, she was torpedoed by the submarine Bluefish, exploded 132,000 gallons of avgas, and sunk.